The morning of my wedding began with the kind of excitement I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. Soft golden sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the bridal suite, casting warm light over the white satin dress hanging beside me. My heart beat faster every time I looked at it. Today was the day. After 5 years together, I was finally going to marry Daniel. I stood in front of the mirror while the makeup artist carefully brushed soft color across my cheeks. My hands rested in my lap, slightly trembling, not from fear, but from the overwhelming happiness I felt. Daniel wasn't just the love of my life. He was my safe place. When life became messy or stressful, he was the person who always knew how to calm me down. When he proposed to me last year under the huge oak tree in the park where we first met, I cried so hard I could barely say yes. And now, only a few hours later, I would be walking down the aisle toward him. Everything should have felt perfect. But there was one thing that made my stomach twist with quiet unease. My sister, Vanessa. Vanessa had always been complicated. Growing up, she had a strange talent for turning every situation into a competition. If I got good grades in school, she somehow found a way to get better ones. If I made new friends, she would charm them until they preferred her company instead. My parents always brushed it off. Vanessa just has a strong personality. My mother used to say with a light laugh. Over the years, I learned to ignore it. But sometimes, deep down, I wondered if Vanessa truly cared about me at all. Still, when she offered to help organize parts of my wedding, I decided to believe she was trying to change. She had helped with decorations, seating charts, and even volunteered to hold onto our handwritten vows until the ceremony. I thought it was a kind gesture. Now, as I finished getting ready, Vanessa walked into the room holding 2 folded sheets of paper. "Your vows," she said with a bright smile. I took them gratefully. "Thank you." She hugged me tightly, but something about the hug felt strange. Too quick, too stiff. "You're going to have a very memorable wedding," she said softly. I assumed she meant it in a good way. An hour later, the ceremony began. The chapel looked breathtaking. White roses lined the aisle and soft piano music floated through the air. Friends and family filled the seats, smiling warmly as I walked past them with my father. At the end of the aisle stood Daniel. He looked nervous, but the moment our eyes met, he smiled in that gentle way that always made me feel safe. When the officiant reached the vow exchange, my heart fluttered. This was it. I unfolded the paper Vanessa had given me. But the moment my eyes scanned the first line, my blood ran cold. These weren't the vows I had written. For a few seconds, I just stared at the paper in my hands, convinced I must have read it wrong. The words blurred together as my heart began pounding louder and louder in my chest. Slowly, I read the first line again. "Daniel, I know I'm not the woman you deserve." My breath caught. That wasn't what I had written, not even close. My real vows were filled with memories our first road trip. The night we stayed up talking until sunrise. The promise I made to always stand beside him through every challenge life could bring. But these words were humiliating. They sounded like an apology, as if I were begging Daniel to tolerate marrying me. My hands started shaking. For a moment, I wondered if maybe Daniel had somehow changed his vows too, maybe as some kind of strange joke. But when I looked up at him, his face told me everything. He looked confused, worried, and slightly pale. "Is something wrong?" the officiant asked gently, noticing our hesitation. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Behind me, I heard faint whispering from the guests. The quiet excitement that had filled the chapel only minutes ago was slowly turning into uncomfortable tension. My eyes instinctively searched the crowd. They landed on Vanessa. She was sitting in the front row beside my parents. And she was smiling, not a warm, supportive smile, a smug one. Suddenly, a terrible realization crept into my mind. My stomach twisted painfully. Before I could say anything, Daniel carefully unfolded his own sheet of paper. He scanned it quickly, and his expression darkened. "These aren't my vows either," he said quietly. A wave of murmurs spread through the room. The officiant frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" Daniel lifted the paper slightly. This isn't what I wrote." The atmosphere in the chapel changed instantly. Guests leaned toward each other, whispering in confusion. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My mother avoided looking at me. Vanessa, however, looked almost amused. The realization hit me harder now. Someone had switched our vows, and suddenly a voice spoke from the back of the chapel. "Wait a second." Everyone turned. It was the photographer. Marcus had been quietly moving around the room all day, capturing moments with his camera. Until now, I had barely noticed him, but he was no longer taking pictures. He was walking slowly down the aisle toward us, his expression serious. "I'm really sorry to interrupt the ceremony," he said calmly, "but I think something important needs to be shown before this goes any further." The room fell completely silent. Marcus held up his camera. "I accidentally recorded something earlier today," he continued, "and after hearing what just happened with the vows, I believe everyone here deserves to see it." My heart began racing again, because at that exact moment, I noticed something chilling. Vanessa's smile had completely disappeared. The chapel was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Marcus walked slowly toward the front of the room, holding his camera like it suddenly carried the weight of the entire ceremony. Every guest turned their attention to him, confusion and curiosity spreading across their faces. "I really didn't plan to interrupt," he said carefully, glancing between Daniel and me. "But what I recorded earlier might explain why the vows were switched." A murmur moved through the crowd. My stomach twisted as Marcus connected his camera to the large screen behind the altar, the one that had been meant to show our wedding photos during the reception. For a brief moment, the screen stayed black, then the video started playing. The room filled with shocked gasps almost instantly. The footage showed the bridal preparation room from earlier that morning. Vanessa stood near the table where our wedding documents had been placed. But she wasn't alone. My parents were there with her. My chest tightened as I watched my own family appear on the screen. Vanessa was holding 2 folded sheets of paper, laughing softly. "My sister is so predictable," she said in the recording. "She'll read whatever we hand her." My mother sounded nervous. "Vanessa, are you sure this is a good idea?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Relax. When she reads those pathetic vows out loud, Daniel will realize she's not good enough for him." The guests in the chapel began whispering louder now. I felt my hands go cold. My father's voice came next in the recording. "And what if she notices?" Vanessa smirked confidently. "She won't. She trusts us too much." She waved the fake vows in the air. "Once Daniel hears her embarrassing herself, he'll finally see that he deserves someone better." Then she added something that made the entire room erupt in disbelief. "Someone like me." Gasps rippled through the audience. The video ended. For a moment, nobody moved. I turned slowly toward the front row where Vanessa and my parents were sitting. My mother looked like she might faint. My father stared down at the floor, but Vanessa looked furious. Daniel stepped forward, his voice colder than I had ever heard before. "Tell me that video isn't real." Vanessa stood up quickly. "Daniel, wait. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it?" he demanded. Her confident attitude was gone now, replaced with desperation. I felt something inside me shift. The hurt was still there, sharp and painful, but beneath it, another feeling was growing stronger. Clarity. This hadn't been a misunderstanding. This had been planned, by my own sister, and my own parents. For the first time since the ceremony started, I straightened my shoulders and lifted my head. If Vanessa wanted a show in front of everyone, she was about to get one. For several seconds after the video ended, the entire chapel remained frozen in stunned silence. 200 guests sat staring at the screen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The joyful atmosphere that had filled the room earlier was completely gone, replaced by shock and disbelief. Vanessa was the first to break the silence. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice sharp and defensive. "It's taken completely out of context." Her words echoed through the chapel, but no one seemed convinced. Daniel slowly turned toward her, his jaw clenched tightly. "Out of context," he repeated coldly. "You were literally bragging about sabotaging our wedding." Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "I was joking," she insisted quickly. "It was just a stupid joke." But the damage had already been done. The guests had seen everything with their own eyes. My mother stood up nervously, her hands shaking. "Sweetheart," she said to me softly, We didn't think it would go this far. Her words cut deeper than she probably realized. You helped her, I said quietly. She didn't answer. That silence was all the confirmation I needed. For a moment the pain threatened to overwhelm me. My own parents had helped humiliate me on the most important day of my life. But then Daniel gently reached for my hand. His touch grounded me. I think it's best if you all leave, he said firmly, looking directly at my parents and Vanessa. Vanessa's eyes widened. You're seriously taking her side, she snapped. Daniel didn't hesitate. There aren't sides, he replied calmly. There's right and wrong. A few guests nodded in agreement. Embarrassed whispers spread through the room as the truth settled in. Vanessa looked around desperately, realizing that no one was supporting her. You're all overreacting, she muttered. But 2 venue staff members had already stepped forward, politely escorting her and my parents toward the exit. Vanessa continued protesting as they walked her down the aisle, but her voice faded as the chapel doors finally closed behind them. The room felt strangely peaceful once they were gone. The officiant cleared his throat gently. Well, that was certainly unexpected. A few nervous laughs broke the tension. Daniel turned toward me again, his expression softening. So, he said quietly, do you still want to marry me today? Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. Yes, I whispered. The guests began clapping softly as the officiant smiled. Then I believe we should continue, he said warmly. Marcus handed us our real vows, which he had thankfully recovered earlier. This time, when I unfolded the paper, the words were the ones I had written from my heart. And when Daniel and I finally said I do, the chapel erupted into cheers, because despite everything that had happened, love had still won.